Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live on day 2 of free agency. So far, an uneventful day for the Los Angeles Chargers. The Steelers just finalized the deal for running back Kenneth Gainwell. Okay. Anyways, so far an uneventful day for the Los Angeles Chargers, but we do have some things to get into today from their perspective. There were some players who left in free agency, which we'll dive into. And then the Chargers are hosting tight end Evan Engram on a visit today. Tomorrow is the official opening of free agency, technically speaking. That's when the new league year begins. And so there's going to be a lot of more movement tomorrow. And I'm sure, hopefully, the Chargers will come away tomorrow with some other signings. But we'll see how it goes. Joining me, as always, is my guy, Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Doing well. Happy to be back. Initially, and of course, 3 minutes before they mentioned that Evan Engram was coming to town for a bit, I set the stream and they didn't do anything. They hadn't done anything. And so, yes, we are here to talk about Evan Engram and some of the other signings or non-signings and re-signings and contracts. But yeah, it's been slow going. And I understand some of the sentiment that like the Ravens had waited before. And it's been, they're trying to be patient. They're not going to overspend on top of market guys, but there's a lot of stuff the Chargers need to do to get a competitive roster out there. And while they do have 10 picks, and we know what those picks are now, not all of them are going to fill every need the Chargers have.
Yeah, still a ways to go. The Chargers potentially have like 49 million, $50 million in cap space. So there's a lot of wiggle room remaining. And this is a team that has a lot of needs. They currently only have 49 roster spots filled, and they have to get to 90, and they have the 10 picks. And you usually, when a team has a lot of money, you probably have like 15-ish undrafted free agents. So there is going to be a lot of signings at some point, whether those are some of the re-signings or external free agents. They have to make some moves. They're not just going to sit on their hands forever. So we'll have to see how that progresses going forward. The Chargers, I think it's very clear that Joe Ortiz is operating how he knows how to operate, which is the Ravens generally sit out the first couple of days. They wait for people like Evan Engram to get cut. Who knows if they'll sign him? But that's kind of how the Ravens have traditionally operated. And so far, unfortunately, they have not been super aggressive. So that's just kind of been the wait and see mode. And I think it's a new experience for us as Chargers fans because they are not rushing to make these initial signings with their cap space. But obviously, we would like some signings potentially here for the Chargers.
Yes, I'll be patient. I can be patient. If we're talking about this the same way by Saturday, you can be a little concerned.
Yeah, for sure. So we are also going to talk about some like potential signings today for the Chargers. There are still some like decent options here. But I do want to start kind of revisiting the Najee Harris thing a bit. I'm going to walk back some of my criticism here. Sometimes you are in the instant reaction business and you have a reaction and you have a take and things like that. I still have some concerns about this. I'm not like fully wrapping my arms around the signing, but part of my potential criticism here is that he was projected to get like an 11, 12, $13 million contract. And when you pay somebody that kind of money, that's starter level money. That's somebody you are funneling carries to, and I think limits your flexibility in the draft. Whereas now with this new contract where it's up to $9.5 million, the cap hit is going to be around $5.5, $6 million. This is a really team-friendly contract for Najee Harris. And we've talked about this a lot, and we'll continue to talk about it, that Joe Ortiz loves the compensatory pick formula. It's very much influencing how he has operated so far through free agency. And theoretically, you get Najee Harris into this situation. I still have some questions about, what is the best way to utilize him. But theoretically, this is a chance that he could play 1 year for the Chargers, get a nice deal next year somewhere else, get a compensatory pick in return. And if you're paying him, a $6 million salary and you don't have to funnel 18 carries a game to him. Number could be 12 to 14, and maybe you get 2 or 3 receptions a game, because I do think he actually is a pretty good receiver. I'm okay with this contract. And I think, for the Chargers, I think they're very much trying to spend on reliability, on consistency. And even though I think J.K. Dobbins has a higher ceiling, we saw another injury last year, whereas Najee Harris has never missed a game in his career. Knock on wood. Hopefully that continues. So
Yeah.
I'm not fully wrapped around yet, but I get it. And particularly at this price, I think it's a very good deal for the Chargers.
It's a fantastic deal. I mean, we watched the situation improve over the course of our own live stream, because we saw Aaron Jones' contract and figured, okay, probably the floor. And Najee Harris, like first round bias. Everyone's mentioned the 1,000 yards every year and stuff. I mean, it's not the worst investment. So I would have assumed he would have gotten at least around what Aaron Jones got. And for him to only get the 1 year, and it's an up to 9 point whatever million, it's a heck of a contract. Like I was genuinely surprised by that contract. And look, yes, it would be nice if the Chargers would make more moves, but some of the deals players are getting are ridiculous, to a point where I've been more stunned, I think, by how much higher deals are this year than I think in years that I can remember. You look at some of the projections for PFF, almost all of them have been off, and off significantly, and usually all under what the projections were, which is unusual. Usually they are a lot closer, 1 or 2 million here and there, but everything's going over. So to be surprised by Najee Harris's contract and that it's so significantly under is A, a pleasant surprise, and B, like, kudos to the Chargers for getting that particular deal and going after that deal, where now you absolutely do feel like you can get more out of that contract, more out of that deal. Certainly more than a 2-year, $10 million contract or 3-year, $11 million contract, which is where it was trending. And again, what PFF was projecting. If anything, I expected him to get more than the projection, because everyone was. So seeing less was fantastic. So it's for 40% of his potential contract, granted that's incentives, to be incentives in 2025 is awesome. I think that I'm on board with this. I just want the Chargers to do the things to make those incentives happen. I hope Najee Harris sees all of that money and goes to the Pro Bowl and becomes an All-Pro and whatever this year. I hope that's the case. I just need to see the Chargers get the rest of the line and blockers and whatever together to make sure that happens.
Yeah, the offensive line definitely still needs some work, which we'll get into here in a minute. But overall, I think this is it. Again, I probably overreacted, and I will admit that I was a little harsh last night. But at the end of the day, I want the signings to make sense, and the idea of like a 3-year, $30 million deal, $35 million, which is what it was projected, to me did not make any sense. So you get the 1-year contract for a $6 million cap hit, and up to $9.5 million. I think that's smart business from the Chargers. They can go out and draft somebody who complements him pretty well. And I think, we never really got to see what Greg Roman's true vision for the running back room was. Gus Edwards hurt in training camp, very much not himself. He gets placed on IR in week 5. Was it week 4? Or did he play against the Chiefs? Anyways, I think he played the first 4 games. So he gets placed on IR. JK gets banged up at the end of the season, and then that's when Gus Edwards is back. There was a lot of rotating. So I think the Chargers are hoping that they can actually get their true vision of running backs out there. You have Najee Harris, who is kind of more of your physical back, who can pass protect, who can catch, but they do need some juice. And maybe that's Kamani Vidal. I don't know. We'll see. I think it's too early to write him off. But this is a great running back class where you can get a complement to Najee Harris or a potential long-term replacement. So I think, round 3, round 4 is a good spot for them to pick, that future long-term running back option. And they have a lot of other needs, but if an Ashton Jitty falls to them, you can take that chance. But I think for now, my preference would be Najee, and then, round 3, round 4 running back.
Yeah, I agree. Round 2 seems to not be a fun spot for running backs right now, because they're either going a little bit earlier or they're more of like a 3rd, 4th round guy. So I agree. Like round 3, round 4 seems like a perfect spot for him.
Yeah, round two is really tricky for me. It's kind of like the sweet spot for an X receiver of your
Hmm.
choosing. That's Jaden Higgins. We'll see. I think after the combine, he probably goes in like the 40s, maybe even sooner than that. But this is 54 is a prime range for like Eli Ayomanor, for Jack Betch, for Trey Harris. So that's a good spot for them, and then it's a really good spot I think for the later tier edge rushers too. Guys like
Yeah.
Josiah Stewart, Kyle Kennard, Kaimon Rucker from North Carolina. That kind of edge rusher where if they do want to get a potential long term edge replacement for Khalil Mack like they did with Thule, that's a good spot. But those are like the two main positions I always find myself targeting, and you can always figure it out with an offensive lineman at that point if you want to as well. But tight end in round two is tricky to me. Like corner in round two is tricky for me. Running back in round two is tricky for me. Like that's really where I'm probably focusing on receiver or edge rusher.
Yeah. Yes. And at this rate, though, if they don't sign a receiver, you might be getting one sooner.
Yes. Yes. Okay, we did get official contract numbers for Bradley Bozeman as well. There are a ton of incentives in this contract. So the wording this morning was 2 years up to $12 million, which got people in a frenzy, which I understand. When you see that 12 million number and you see $6 million per year, it gets a little it is a little crazy. That being said, it really is only a $2.3 million cap hit this year in 2025. It is a $4.1 million cap hit in 2026. However, the Chargers can basically get out of it completely after the 2025 season. It's structured very similarly to how they did Bud Dupree's contract, where you're essentially, I think, just paying for the stability here of, maybe this is your backup center, maybe this is your starting center. Maybe you can draft somebody to play ahead of him. Maybe you can, see what Zion Johnson has. But the contract for Bradley Bozeman is not nearly as bad as it was made out to be when it was released as a 2-year up to $12 million. I would be very surprised if he ends up seeing the bulk of that $12 million. For him, I hope he does. That's great money for a starting center.
Mhm.
But it's not that much of a big deal for the Chargers.
Yeah, adorable what everyone's saying in the chat. They're like, oh, they compete this and that, and he's not the starter and this and that. Guys, I'm pretty sure it's Zion Johnson and Bradley Bozeman. Didn't look. We talked about Bozeman being back. Oh, it's not going to happen. It did. Oh, Zion's playing center. Oh, that's really cool. That's going to happen. Didn't happen. Like, I think Zion's your left guard. Bradley's your center. You can find someone in the draft to compete. But
Sure.
ultimately, I think there is one spot that's going to change. And so far, it hasn't.
Yeah, I think this is very much a draft where you take a guy, I keep on mentioning his name, but Tate Ratledge, for example, who
Mhm.
is probably a guard, but can compete at center. And then you just have that rookie and Zion and Bradley Bozeman figure it out. For what it's worth, Daniel Popper is pretty convinced that Zion Johnson is going to get a chance to start the season at center. You take that for what it's worth. He obviously knows his stuff. I tend to think that it'd be very difficult for somebody to make that transition in year one and beat out a guy like Bradley Bozeman. Not that he's like the greatest center, but he's been a center for a very long time. He knows the system, all that stuff. So uh, I I don't know, man. We'll see what happens. There was a lot of talk about a lot of players potentially taking snaps at center in the offseason, and they got to OTAs, and it was just here's Bradley Bozeman and here's Brendan Hymas. So uh, we kind of have to wait and see. But I do think that there is at least a chance that somebody else besides Bradley Bozeman is starting at center.
Sure. Yes. There is a non-0%
There's a
chance.
non-0% chance.
Uh, eh, eh.
Tell me how you really feel.
That's how I feel. The pause and the nothing said there. It's about how I feel.
Yeah, okay. That's fair. Okay. Other news from the Chargers standpoint. Christian Fulton signs a 2-year, $20 million contract with the Kansas City Chiefs, $15 million guaranteed. That is a number far greater than I would have expected. We were maybe considering like, oh, like the Chargers chose Dante Jackson. They could have just done that for Christian Fulton. Well, turns out Christian Fulton was getting $4.5 million more per year. This is kind of crazy to me, given who the Chiefs have kind of been at corner. He's at his best when he can kind of play back and read and react in cover 2, cover 3 situations. They play a ton of man coverage, a ton of press man coverage. So very curious fit there for the Kansas City Chiefs. But $10 million per year, man. I hope that is able to get the Chargers a nice little compensatory pick.
Yeah, holy cow, man. Again, go to Jesse Minter if you want your career to turn around. That contract, obviously, Ford, Tart, Molden, TBD on some of these other guys. Neiman, not exactly specifically defense, but he got a nice deal today, and we'll talk about him a little bit. Yeah. And Troy Dye, if he comes back or if he goes elsewhere, I'm sure he gets a little pay bump too. So everyone's feasting because of Jesse Minter. But I was bummed. Of course, it goes to the Chiefs, and of course, the Chargers will have to see him. Don't know who he'd specifically be covering at this point. Quentin? Won't see a ton of.
Yeah, because you would think McDuffie would be on Ladd.
Yeah,
because McDuffie does go into the slot. So.
Right. So,
who's their third corner? Is that Shamari Connor? He's their slot corner usually. Is that right?
He's at least. Yeah, I assume he's still on the roster. So if he is, then yes.
Okay. All right. So the Chargers, obviously, you pick up a guy like Dante Jackson to replace him for cheaper, and we'll see what happens with the official, compensatory pick situation. Nice little pay raise for Christian Fulton. You mentioned Nick Neiman. He is signing with the Houston Texans, a deal that is a 1-year deal, right? Yeah, 2-year deal, excuse me, up to $6.5 million. So not a huge contract, but this is, why'd you just signal thumbs down?
I was signaling thumbs up to answer that it was a 1-year deal, and then you said 2-year deal, and I did thumbs down.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, according to Tom Pelissero, it's a 2-year deal up to $6.5 million. Again, that probably is like $1.5 million cap hit for the next year. Mm-hmm. I'm honestly very, very surprised that the Chargers are letting him walk. That is a decent contract, but he's been their best special teams player. And I think it's doubly surprising because they let Amen Ogbongbemiga walk, and now they let Nick Neiman walk. And those were their 2 main special teams players, under Ryan Ficken from a linebacker standpoint. Nick Neiman has been one of the best, special teams players they've had over the last few years. So I'm a little surprised, and I do think this obviously means that Troy Dye and his return is much more important.
Yeah, I would imagine so, because you're not, I don't think, bringing
Whoa,
what happened?
Joey Bosa signing with the Buffalo Bills.
Wait,
that's out of nowhere.
I mean, not that isn't. I get the Bills would do that, but I can't believe after everything we had heard about the 49ers. Wow. Okay. Joey Bosa to the Bills. Wow.
I'm actually kind of stunned.
Yeah. Holy cow.
Dude, he could have gone to play with his brother. They just cut their other edge rusher today.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I thought. Right, they cut Leonard Floyd. I figured, okay, here comes the new thing. Wow. Did they give a prediction or not a prediction? Something on the contract yet, or
1 year, $12.6 million deal?
Dang. 1 year, $12.6
I assume that's very incentivized.
Wow. Okay, that's
good
interesting.
For Joey. Hey man, Buffalo Bills have a chance to go win a Super Bowl, so good for him.
Yeah, I get it. That's a good spot. They released Von Miller, get Joey. Here reunite Josh Palmer, I guess.
That's not a lot. That was a lot more than I thought Joey Bosa would get on the open market, and I think you're kind of crazy if you think otherwise.
I had no particular idea there either way, but hey, good for him. I hope it works out. Truly, like
Yeah.
I hope he's awesome for them. I hope he's just really bad once if they face the Bills. Although, man, if they face the Bills, I mean, Alt versus Bosa, like Slater versus Bosa, like come on, like that's
good vibes.
That's pretty
good
fun.
vibes. And he gets to play with his buddy Josh Allen now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I guess if you can't beat him, although you literally try to kill him, and okay, cool, go for it.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there, but so I would expect that Troy Dye returns. At some point the Chargers are going to have some decisions to make at linebacker. Because I would have assumed that Troy Dye and Nick Niemann would just both come back and keep playing special teams, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
All right, last piece of news here, and then we'll get into some potential signings, take some questions, all that good stuff, and who knows, maybe we'll get a signing during this show. The Chargers are hosting Evan Engram on a visit today. I would assume that is like kind of coming down to the end of the meeting, because that's kind of, they usually finish with dinner and things like that. So I would assume that he's been in the building today, or maybe that's tomorrow. I don't really know specifics, but usually when it gets tweeted out like that, he is, in the building at that point in time. The Saints did re-sign Juwan Johnson to a 3-year, $30 million contract. So if the Chargers want a tight end that is currently a free agent, Evan Engram is probably easily the best option. What are your thoughts as it pertains to losing Juwan Johnson and potentially signing Evan Engram?
Regarding Juwan Johnson, I don't know where the Saints keep wanting to go with this running it back thing, but they gave him a nice deal. Weird. They gave him slightly over the projection, so it's a good deal for him. Kellen Moore does not let him go to the Chargers, I suppose, if that were an option. So, he'll do his thing, and someone will throw him the football, and we'll see how it goes. And they'll have to keep up score in a lot of games because, Staley's the defensive coordinator, and we'll see how all that goes. But yeah, good for him. Bummer for the Chargers, but it's okay. As far as Evan Engram goes, I am of two minds. I think one is like, heck yeah, you need to get literally anybody for the Chargers right now. I think that like genuinely they needed anything. My only concern, which isn't a huge concern, is the blocking, of course, because he was of the options that were potentially or actually available. So like maybe Andrews or Dallas Goedert, if he's being cut, traded, whatever, or of course, Juwan Johnson. Of the 4 guys that we've been discussing, he's blocked the least. With that said, like Hayden Hurst, his blocking dropped dramatically on other teams, on 3 separate teams, but jumped up with Greg Roman, both with the Ravens and with the Chargers. With Evan Engram, I think they'll bump him up a little bit. His blocking grades were pretty good last year, although he was like 3rd as a zone blocker in terms of grade and like 20-something or 30th. As a gap blocker. So there's that, but it's fine. Like you get Disley, you have Disley, you bring Fisk back because it affords you the chance to get any of these guys. And that's the same argument for a Juwan Johnson or a Harold Fannin or Elijah Arroyo, in the draft, and what we've been discussing for a while. Like you don't have to go get a pure inline guy because you have guys who can do that. Will Disley, tremendous blocker. Fisk, really good blocker. You don't need that. So I'm open for anything. I tweeted that the bar is low. Hayden Hurst recorded 0 wins on 71 run blocking snaps last year. So literally anything other than 0.
I didn't realize it was 0, man.
It was 0. So anything better than that, which would literally just be 1 win, would be an improvement. So I think you get the more realized version of what they were trying to get last year. If he ends up being the signing, it doesn't count against the comp pick as he was released. So I think it fits overall. All the 4 options that we have been discussing, none of them are long-term options. So, which is, good. Like, either one of these guys, they were short-term. You can still take a guy in the draft. You can find somebody next year. We'll see what the contract, if they sign him, ends up being. But yeah, I'm for it. There was no premium tight end available in free agency. And I'm assuming there's nobody available via trade. So you weren't going to get an instant 1,000-yard tight end, immediately. So get a guy who works with Will Disley. You can kind of, Frankenstein's monster this thing to get a tight end passing attack and call it a day. And head into the draft feeling good because Loveland might not be there. Then you get to round 2 and your guy might not be there. And then you get to round 3. All the tight ends are gone. You don't want to watch what happened in 2023 in a strong class, because every time the Chargers were picking, somebody was gone. There's either overdraft the next guy or you didn't get the guy in front of you because they went in front of you. So I really like this approach. I'm saying all these things with the Chargers only hosting for a visit. I know the Broncos are also interested, but that's how I feel ahead of this visit.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you and I were on the Juwan Johnson thing so heavily in part because we don't feel the same way about this tight end class that a lot of other people do. And so if you sign Evan Ingram, it does give you some flexibility where if you miss out on the top 2 tight ends in round 1 and you get to round 2 and there's not a tight end there that you really love, you don't have to reach for that player, right? Like I think, the Jacksonville Jaguars are hilariously a very funny, example of this, where they signed Evan Ingram to be kind of their big slot receiver, but they still needed an inline guy. And so they're sitting there in the second round back in the day, and they had to go reach I think it was 27 spots for Brenton Strange because they needed an inline blocking kind of tight end. So if you're the Chargers, you don't want to be in that position where you're sitting at pick 54. You desperately need a starting tight end and all of the good ones are gone. So you have to go reach for, a Terrence Ferguson, for example. I know a lot of the chat loves Terrence Ferguson, but him at 54 would be objectively crazy, in my opinion. I guess not objectively. My opinion, it would be crazy at 54. So it just gives you that flexibility. So I think we kind of have to be in favor of it, but it is a little bit conflicting because his particular fit in this offense is a little clunky to me with how he would potentially take designer targets away, I should say, from Ladd and from Quentin Johnston. Like a lot of his skill set and, success rate over the last few years has been because of his, designer touch role, where I think it's 30% of his targets have come from screens or mesh/shallow crossers. And that's kind of what Quentin Johnston's role has been for this team for the last 2 years. So it's a little conflicting. I think if you look back to what he was as a Giant, where he was not getting, 900 yards receiving, he can do kind of the vertical stretch things as long as he's kind of more of a zone receiver than a man coverage beater, where his contested catch rate historically is 38%. So as long as you know what you're getting and know that this is a tight end with flaws and a tight end that is not going to solve your pass catching role, he can be an effective signing. But that also kind of limits the kind of contract I would feel comfortable giving him. Whereas Juwan Johnson, 3 for 30 for Evan Ingram, I would be a little remiss, I think, if Evan Ingram signed for 3 years, $10 million per year. I would be a little uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, no shot that's going to be the case if the Chargers are interested. If there's a mild bidding war between them and the Broncos, yeah, it'll bump it up. But I don't anticipate him signing for much. Now, the Najee Harris deal has me overhyped for whatever this potential contract could be. Because now I'm waiting for the 1 year, $3 million deal for Evan Ingram, which is not going to happen. But I'm excited for what that deal could potentially be.
One more thing about Joey Bosa. Ian Rappaport says that Joey Bosa gets $12 million guaranteed and can earn up to $15.6 million. That is a strong contract for Joey Bosa at this
15
stage.
more or 15?
No, up to 15.6 total.
Okay, I got you.
$12 million guaranteed, though. Diana Rossini said that the Dolphins and 49ers were all also interested. So he's kind of in that ring chasing mode as well, potentially.
Yeah. No, do your thing, man. He doesn't have... I don't know how much longer he's going to play. We'll see how this works for him with the Bills.
Yeah.
But, this guy's body's broken down. Cold weather stinks. That's a rough place to go if your body's breaking down. I was just going to say. But that is a heck of a contract. So I suppose that'll make it work.
Yeah, Bosa does not. Bosa in the cold weather is going to be really interesting. Granted, he did play at Ohio State, so he kind of knows.
Yeah.
Okay, Adam Schefter just making an LA joke. Okay, all right. Any other thoughts about Evan Ingram before we get to these remaining targets?
Nope. I'm generally in favor of it. That's all I got.
I agree. All right, before we get to some potential remaining targets, do have to tell you guys about our friends over at Prize Picks. Again, I know some of you are tired of the ad read, but We got to pay the bills around here, and PrizePicks is the best way that we are able to do that. Those of you that have used our link to prizepicks.com/guilty code guilty have also had a wonderful time with it. To me, it's super fun, super easy. Doesn't take me that long. You're not super invested into a year-long fantasy pick. You know, if you picked Anthony Davis in fantasy basketball this year, you're probably kind of crushed right now. You know, if you picked Kyrie Irving in fantasy basketball, you're kind of crushed right now. You know, you don't have to worry about that in PrizePicks. It's a daily fantasy app. It's the best and easiest way to consume daily fantasy sports. Football is obviously over, but you can consume any kind of sport on prizepicks.com/guilty code guilty. It does genuinely help support the show, so we do really appreciate it, and it helps you out as well. Again, that is prizepicks.com/guilty code guilty. All right, so I made a spreadsheet. Spreadsheets in the chat. Shout out Daniel Popper. Kind of stealing a bit here, but it's okay. I wanted to kind of put on the screen here for our video audience. I'm a visual learner, so this always helps me out. For our audio audience, we'll kind of go through some of the names here, but these are free agency targets from an interior offensive line standpoint: wide receiver, tight end, interior defensive line, edge rusher, linebacker, and then we have some cut/trade candidates as well. Anybody that is highlighted in yellow has previously been cut, and those players would not count against the compensatory pick formula, which is, I think, a very important thing again for Joe Ortiz. Tyler, where would you like to start on potential targets that are on the screen here?
Oh God, dude. You know, the more you read it, the more you just okay. I guess I would like to start with the last desperate breath of what is the receiver group here. And that is Amari Cooper at this point. If it is not Amari Cooper, and you're looking at this list, and for the audio audience, after Amari Cooper, and with everybody else already gone, it is Brandon Cooks, David Moore, Devin Duvernay, Deontay Johnson, Keenan Allen. Like
this is alphabetical order, by the way. It's not like rankings or anything like that.
For sure.
Just want to point that out.
Yes. Tyler Lockett is obviously available, but for the most part, it is a pretty rough list. Like, you are looking at, if it is not Amari Cooper, I'm not saying you're forced to take a receiver at 22, but your first two picks are now officially going to be receiver, unless you're trading for someone that I don't know. So that is your last attempt to get a meaningful boundary receiver who can play legitimate snaps. And even then, it is betting on a receiver who had a very much so a down year last year, who for a team that just paid $36 million to Josh Palmer. So I was not a huge Amari Cooper fan. I think he was like 11th for me in our free agent rankings for the Chargers, mostly because of the uncertainty about what happened last year. But at this point, that's it. And if they don't get Ingram and there is no available Mark Andrews, I get to catch passes from the Chargers next year, which is a lifelong dream. So thanks for that, I suppose. So it'll be Alex and I holding it up down there, and I guess Steven will play right guard.
Yeah. Right guard in the NFL with my 32-inch arms. You know, let's go.
That's pretty good. That's not bad.
Haven't played contact football since 2013. So there we go.
I won my UCI intramural championship. So let's go.
Yeah. No, I did 7-on-7 football in college too, but
we got this.
I was a lineman. You know, I played tight end for our 7-on-7 team, which was a lot of fun. First time in my entire life I got to catch passes.
That trick play is gonna be sick, man. I'm ready. I'll throw it to you, dude. You'll do the bows. You'll hold me up in the end zone.
Yes,
like, that'll be awesome, dude.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, receivers very tricky. The Chargers obviously expressed interest several times last year in Deontay Johnson. They did almost sign Marquez Valdez-Scantling before he ended up signing with the Bills. So maybe they could revisit that. I wouldn't hate that. You know, he did have a pretty good season for the Saints. Was not very used often, and with the Buffalo Bills, but he at least is fast. So that's kind of where we're at with the receiver room. It's very tricky, right? This group is very flawed. Like, there are, you know, good like wide receiver 4 types. Like, I do think Noah Brown, if they just needed a 4, like that's a good 4 where you can play special teams, block, kind of an upgrade over Simi Fehoko. but that's a 4. You still need a 2 in our opinions. The Chargers might think they only need a wide receiver 3. But they do need somebody who can legitimately start for them. And right now, that's comfortably Amari Cooper. And that's it. I don't know, man. Like, I know everybody wants Keenan Allen, and I get it. But Amari Cooper, from a boundary perspective, is the only really like outside receiver I would be comfortable starting right now.
Yeah. If it's not Amari Cooper, I guess, yeah, go get Mike Williams. Well, there it is, everyone.
Oh man. I love Mike Williams, but I don't know, man. Like he's probably like a 15 snap kind of player. That's really difficult in this offense to justify. But yeah, man, I think if you don't get Amari Cooper and Cooper Kupp, so for those asking, Cooper Kupp is on the right side from the cut candidate perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Cooper Kupp and Lan McConkey, their role is very, very redundant, where both of those guys are best suited from the slot. Can they make that work? Sure. But Cooper Kupp has an injury history very similar to like Joey Bosa. Like the man has barely played football the last few years. So if you miss out on Cooper Kupp, I'm kind of the mindset that at that point you pivot down to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Noah Brown, and you get your wide receiver 4 at least. And then you can go get your wide receiver 2, 3 in the draft, which I know people don't want to hear. They need some kind of professional wide receiver to come in and play football for them. And those guys are not going to move the needle at all, but they would at least be able to fill a role, and they'd be very cheap. Like the thing with Mike Williams is like he has that first round pedigree. He has like the highlight, catches. I think he's probably a little bit more expensive than I would like. So ignoring wide receiver is not a great idea. I completely agree. This is where they're at. I very much prefer Amari Cooper at this point in time, which is kind of sad that is where we are at with wide receiver.
Yeah, not great, Bob. It was never a great group anyway, but there were some names, and those names are gone, and now we're here with Amari Cooper. And again, I cannot pretend to sit here and if they signed Amari Cooper to be like, yes, offense has changed. Like, woo! I can't sit here and pretend to do that in front of you guys, so I won't, even if it happens. But it will clearly help the Chargers in some way, hopefully a big way, but it'll help the Chargers.
Yeah, it will. So receivers that are connected to Sanjay Lal are obviously Amari Cooper on this list, Noah Brown from their days with the Cowboys, Tyler Lockett, who was in Seattle, which he's not as like injury history as Cooper Kupp, but he's definitely not the same kind of player. I wouldn't necessarily be like opposed, but because again, they just need like a professional wide receiver at this point. But I don't know. I have some questions there. If they wanted to keep the whole like former Steeler thing going, Van Jefferson was like okay for them last year as like a deep threat. Wouldn't necessarily be opposed there.
Yeah.
That's where we're at with the wide receiver, folks. Van Jefferson.
Right. I'm just reading some of these names, and I swear you put 4 fake ones on here.
Olamide Zaccheaus. That is a real name.
That one I know. He was a frequent, waiver wire free agency for fantasy. But like, I don't know where Fred Johnson came from. Was he an Eagle?
He was.
Yeah. All right.
Nice job. Good transition there to the interior offensive line. The Chargers thankfully do have some options here. Andre James is the cut candidate. So theoretically, if you want to keep Zion Johnson at guard or challenge somebody else at guard, you can bring in Andre James as a center option. The obvious connection here with the Chargers is Kevin Zeitler, who played with the Giants and the Ravens, he has several ties to the team. He obviously knows the scheme. He is 36 years old, so he is definitely up there in age, but he still is playing at a really high level. He was a Pro Bowl player last year. I think he received second team All-Pro votes. So he's still very good. I think, 1 year, $8 to $10 million probably gets that deal done. If they want him, he can play on either side of the ball. That's like the most obvious one. And then Alex Katzen pointed this out. The Cardinals actually last year led the league in gap scheme run percentage. And that is where Mr. Will Hernandez will be coming from. Although his offensive line coach is now the offensive coordinator with the Dallas Cowboys. So he's somebody to keep an eye on, but he could obviously just follow his offensive line coach to Dallas.
Yeah, I'm desperate for anything at this point. Will Hernandez's numbers, which I haven't looked at, which I guess I should have. All right, well, I'm not thrilled that I looked at those, but it's more of a run blocking perspective, I'm sure here. Yeah, these are names.
These are names. For anybody who is now just joining us, the names that are highlighted in yellow are players who were already cut before today. So the Chargers will be looking at cut names, and that is obviously a way for them to gain some advantages from a compensatory pick formula. So anybody who is yellow has already been released by their previous team. So Brandon Scherf is a name as well. I think is a little bit more interesting. I have this image in my head of what he was like in Washington, where he was hurt like all the time, but he actually played in every single game for the Jaguars the last 3 years. They also ran a ton of gap scheme run percentage. He is also an older guard, but similar to wide receiver, this is kind of where we're at with guards. If they want to go younger, you're talking about obviously Will Hernandez or Tevin Jenkins. Tevin Jenkins would be the youngest potential option. According to some Bears reporters, the market for Tevin Jenkins is basically like non-existent. So the numbers are really good for Tevin Jenkins. His wins above replacement was like top 15 in the league. His pass block win rate is really, really solid. His run block win rate on ESPN was top 10 in the league. The numbers are all really, really good for Tevin Jenkins. I think that potentially is like due to his back history from college, which is not great. But it sounds like they could go sign him for super cheap at this point in time if they really wanted to.
Yeah. Whoa. Voice went away there. Yeah. Cool. I've softened the Mekhi Becton thing as well, but that's just because of Brandon Thorne and I trust him.
Yeah. I mean, Mekhi Becton fits for sure. I've never been opposed to Mekhi Becton. The thing is that the assistant GM got to watch everything in New York for 4 years, and it was not pretty for Mekhi Becton. So people change, right? But I don't know. I just kind of have a hard time thinking the GM that watched him for 4 years, burned them, would be like, yeah, bring that guy to LA now.
I'd agree. I agree, but I also wouldn't completely agree given that it's a different spot.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. So yeah, I think ideally at this point, you're talking about Kevin Zeitler and Will Hernandez. That would be great. I don't think either player will cost them very much. But Kevin Zeitler is potentially the only addition, and then you draft somebody else, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So right now, Trey Pipkins is still on the roster, and it doesn't really seem like he's going anywhere anytime soon.
No, on the one hand, they didn't need to cut him to free up money. On the other hand, same thing with Gus Edwards, and some of these guys. So he's still on the roster. I think you get your right guard maybe, and then you release him. That sort of thing. Like you got to make sure you get your guy, and a lot of these guys have gone away.
Sure.
So we'll see, man. We will see. Again, they had no competition for him. They let him rock as the guy all last year. So we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Any names on the interior defensive line? Edge rusher I put on here just because there are some interesting names, but I don't know how much I really want them to go spend on an edge rusher. But any names from an interior defensive line standpoint or linebacker is suddenly a bigger need here.
Yeah. Linebacker, I think, is just that Troy Dye one and figured out probably in the draft or maybe a UDFA. As you said, they have to get to 90, and they're at what, 49, you said?
49, so, yep.
A UDFA is making the linebacker spot.
Technically, that would be 51 because Najee Harris and Dante Jackson are not on the roster yet.
Fair. Congratulations to the future linebacker who makes it as UDFA. You can come back to this clip and say that I told you so. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Interior defensive line, plenty of names on there. Looking more so for a pass rush type, but plenty of the names that we've mentioned throughout this free agency process. the guys that are on there, the cut candidates. We knew Draymond Jones would be cut, or felt like he would be cut. He was cut. I've been wanting him since they drafted not him, and they drafted Jerry Tillery. So I don't know. Maybe I'll get what I want at some point. But yeah, it's a good group of interior defensive linemen, but they should be looking for a pass rusher because it's not a great room right now.
No, it is not a great room. I do think they need to get some pass rush juice in here. Morgan Fox, I think is fine if they want to go that route. But to me, like Draymond Jones, Larry Ogunjobi, or Malik Collins would all be, really good signings here. So Draymond Jones, he was kind of like an edge rusher, defensive tackle hybrid for the Seahawks last year because they didn't really have like an edge player. So they traded away Darrell Taylor like right before the season started. And then 2 weeks after that or whatever, Uchenna Nwosu got injured. And so they basically had like Boye Mafe and like nobody else on the edge. So they moved Draymond Jones out on the edge. But theoretically, he is familiar with the kind of the Ravens, Michigan world because he played for Mike McDonald in Seattle this past year. So I do think that makes some sense. Again, if they want to continue to, highlight the former Pittsburgh Steelers, Ogunjobi makes some sense. He didn't have a great year this past year in Pittsburgh, but previously he was kind of like a 35 to 40 pressures, 5-6 sacks. So he's a very productive pass rusher. He's played in a lot of 3-4 odd front schemes, and so has Malik Collins. Yeah. And Malik Collins actually, looking at the numbers right now, he had 45 pressures and 6 sacks last year, 48 and 7 for the Houston Texans in 2023. So this is a guy who, he's kind of played more in the 4-3 universe where you're playing a little bit more aggressive. You're more of a gap shooting kind of scheme. But he's been highly, highly productive the last 2 years for the 49ers and Houston Texans. So from a pass rush standpoint, the Chargers do actually have some options here. Levi Onwuzurike still available. I think that has to do with his health. And then the ageless wonder, Calais Campbell, who honestly at this point, let's do it, man. Bring the vibes. He's obviously very familiar with the Ravens defense. So yeah, the Chargers luckily do have some pass rush options. I'm not crazy about some of these run stuffing types, like Fuller runs with Fatukasi. He's an older player. Dalvin Tomlinson, an older player. You always worry about the run defense first. But from a pass rush perspective, man, like they do thankfully have some options here.
Yeah, plenty of options. It's tricky when the draft looms and you know that you can also get some great sick names over there. But I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of really, really awesome big nose tackle types or defensive tackles who are 300 pounds. You want a lighter pass rusher type, I think you can go sign one or two.
Yeah.
Dang, Malik Collins really had that much last year.
Yeah, it shocked me. I was not prepared to see that because they traded like a 7th round pick for him. And then he was going to be Javon Hargrave's backup, and Javon Hargrave got injured. And Hargrave just signed like for a pretty decent bag.
Yeah.
So Malik Collins had himself a good year, and I think he's got a nice little pass rush bag to him. But I think of these choices, I still believe in Draymond Jones's potential, and he has scheme familiarity, and he was cut already. So I'm like you mentioned, definitely I wanted him in that year in the draft as well. So hopefully we can make it happen this time around.
Yeah. I'm looking for anything I can find recruiting related to Malik Collins, but although I think he might have been drafted or in college before.
Yeah, he was drafted in 2016, so he would have been at Nebraska already when Harbaugh started. So he has been in the league for a while. He is still 29. He turns 30 in April next month. So he's not that old.
Nah, not at all. This is still a good group, though.
Yeah. Linebacker wise, are we in bring Denzel Perryman back territory?
I don't know, because they started the year and they really tried like a 1-2-3 linebacker deal where Deion Henley was definitely the guy, but they had a lot of Perryman, a lot of Colson, but then they never really were able to settle into that because this guy was hurt, couldn't play. This guy was hurt, didn't play. So you never really got to see that whole thing. So they could do that. But if you're bringing in your linebacker who was your guy in your defense and you think he's brilliant and he's Devarro Bowman's linebacker 1 in the draft, reportedly, I just think that has to be your starter. So is Denzel Perryman cool with jumping in and being a very small role, or officially be the third guy in the group? At this point in his career, maybe. And the vibes are good. He played well last year. And hey, contract is a contract. So if Perriman wants to come in and be the third guy, cool. That also then you still have not solved special teams at all because Perryman is not playing. Okay, timeout. I'd love to see Denzel Perryman play special teams because that would be awesome. It's not going to happen though.
He doesn't do it, yeah.
No, but it'd be sick. That would somebody would die on prime time, and it would be entertaining.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of thoughts. The linebacker room has definitely been cleared out in terms of free agency. You know, I'm very comfortable with Troy Dye coming back. I think he's a solid linebacker 3. They've carried 5 linebackers every year that Ryan Ficken has been around. Like, generally speaking, you have 3 linebackers who play special teams a lot for Ryan Ficken. So I think they do need to get to that point. You know, do you want to take a chance on a guy like Jack Sanborn, who's played a lot of special teams for the Bears, started some games in a pinch there? Do you want to just bring back Shaq Quarterman and then draft somebody? I don't have a ton of strong takes here, but it is a need. If Troy Dye leaves, then this is definitely a list where we will have to re-examine some things and see where they can potentially make an impact here. Not that we like when they signed Troy Dye last year, I was like, oh yeah, special team signing, and then he was actually like really good for them in some games. So again, credits to Navarro Bowman and company, but if he leaves, this list becomes very important, I think, because linebacker 3 is definitely a need that they need to get a veteran in my opinion.
Yeah, if Perryman leaves and Dye leaves, you're picking one early day 3 at this point.
Yeah.
So
please don't make me watch linebackers Chargers. I really do not want to do that. I really don't want to do that.
Yeah. No, I refuse to watch them even if they trade everybody. Like, I'm not watching linebackers. I can't do it.
Yeah. Okay, so last thing here, the cut candidates worth mentioning. There's actually a decent amount of tight ends that could potentially make sense from a cut standpoint. I'm I'm gonna be a caricature of myself and bring up Colby Parkinson here again. He was completely cast aside with the Rams after they signed him to his relatively big contract this past year. So the Rams don't necessarily save a lot of money if they move on from Colby Parkinson. But they do have Tyler Higbee, who could also be cut. Either one of those players, if they do get cut, I think make a lot of sense for the Chargers. They were rumored to be very interested in Brock Bowers last year. There's already some rumors connecting them to Colston Loveland or Tyler Warren. They're obviously very far, down the draft boards, but they don't love their tight end room. It sounds like, just based off of that. So if one of those 2 players gets cut, I'm definitely interested. And then the big one is Mark Andrews. I think there is a chance that this is something that the Chargers could pull off, but this to me is firmly a trade option.
Yeah.
After just kind of reading some of the reporting on Mark Andrews, and I also asked some agents that I'm, connected with. Most of the league expect that Mark Andrews plays his last year on the Ravens this year, and then they kind of pivot towards Isaiah Likely next year. Him and Lamar Jackson are extremely close. And it sounds like you could convince the Chargers or you could convince the Ravens to trade him, but it doesn't sound like he is a legitimate cut candidate. Again, this is just based off of reading from The Athletic and Sports Illustrated and a couple of agents who I know pretty well, just, what they have, ears to the ground. But that being said, if Evan Engram decides to choose the Broncos, for example, you get to draft night and you potentially trade a 3rd round pick for Mark Andrews. I think this is something that the Chargers should at least be calling about. Yeah,
they have to, especially if Engram signs. Mark Andrews would be my preferred option. Trade, it's not like the best thing there, but it's the safest option. It's the best option. It's related to the Greg Roman scheme and fit and whatever there. So it's really 3rd round pick. I guess you'd have to blow the Ravens away, right? So sure. Yeah, you know what? I would be for it. If it's 3rd round pick and Mark Andrews, or I don't know,
3rd round pick and Terrence Ferguson.
Well, hey now.
I know Terrence
Good
Ferguson
Twitter
has a
fan.
lot of fans. He is very athletic. I will say that.
Yes, he is very athletic.
Nathan asking about George Kittle. I don't know, man.
Is
I
he
think
available, or is there buzz?
right. There's been more buzz from what I can read that they're going to extend him. It sounds like they are trying to rebuild the core around him and Christian McCaffrey, but I don't know, man. The 49ers have gutted their roster pretty well. So I would call for sure. I would definitely call.
Sure.
But it doesn't sound like there's been any buzz to merit him potentially being available.
Yeah. If they're looking at someone like Evan Ingram, who's not a known blocker, do you think that opens them up to a Kyle Pitts?
Oh yeah, I forgot to put him on here. Yeah, I think they could stand to do that.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody you like on here from a cut trade standpoint?
You've mentioned them. I think I'm squarely looking at tight end right now. If they cut Alexander, that's a different story, but I'm not sure they go with Jackson and then Alexander, and I don't know. Don't love the 1-2 there. And Wosu's cap is insane for this year, especially for a guy who barely played last year. So I'm mostly looking at tight end here.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right. Let's get to some of these super chats and then we'll head out for tonight. William wants to know, how'd you feel about taking a 1-year prove it deal for Mike Williams? I assume he fits the need as the X and has chemistry with Herbo and should be cheap.
Yeah, I agree there. We'll see what the contract ends up being. I think receivers are being paid more than I would have guessed overall, but again, with what we've been saying with Hurst and with DJ Chark, anything's an upgrade. Like anything is an upgrade. But you also, Mike Williams isn't playing every game next year. I'm not even sure he'll play double-digit games next year. So it makes sense, like on paper, sure. Like one game, get him in there, yes. But for an entire season, I'm worried. So Mike Williams to solve the issue, band-aid it for now, okay. But you got to go do something in the draft then.
Yeah. If Mike Williams is your offseason veteran edition, then you're probably taking a receiver at 22. Like,
yeah,
that's a tough spot to be in.
Has Quentin played special teams?
No.
Okay. So what's the other thing? Mike's not.
Mike's not playing special teams. Lad's not playing special teams. Outside of maybe punt returning.
Right. So, I mean, sure, you go get Simi Fehoko at that point, I'm guessing. But yeah, you'd have to draft a guy who can play special teams. And yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah. Zachary McNutt in here says trade down from 22 to draft Higgins or Zabel. What are your thoughts there?
I like the trade down idea for Higgins. You like him more than I do, even though I think he's like awesome in the second round for the Chargers. But you like him more. What do you think that range ends up being for him? Because on the consensus, I think he's still in the 70s. But people talk about him like he's a, top 50 guy. That would be ahead of where the Chargers would pick. I think he goes ahead of where the Chargers would pick. He just feels like that safe option who also is athletic, who has good, nice numbers. So I think he would go like first 10 picks in the second round.
So he is currently 62nd on the consensus board.
Ooh, he's moved up then. Wow.
Yeah. I think his range, like I do like him quite a bit, and he tested a lot better than I think, but he showed on tape. Like I was expecting kind of like a higher vertical jump guy, broad jump.
Totally.
But when he ran what he ran, I was like, okay, like this is to me, his range probably starts at like 28 where I would feel comfortable. So this is definitely not somebody where I'm like, oh yeah, take him at 22. His value to this draft, I think, is going to be really interesting because it's not a good wide receiver class, and I think people are souring a little bit on Teteroa McMillan, which like if he falls to 22, like cool, like you can take that pick, but there's rumors that Tet McMillan is like a 4.7 guy, and there was a yikes clip going around saying that he's never watched film in his life, so I'm not crazy about that part. So I don't know, man. This receiver class is just not very good. So if you're a team, who's picking in the late 20s and you need a wide receiver, like I think Jaden Higgins is probably the guy that you can most talk yourself into taking in the late 20s. So,
Yeah, wow.
I don't know really how far you can trade down and have a chance to take him. So it's such a tricky draft to predict right now because everybody's saying like between players like 20 and 60, there's so much variance on teams' boards. But we've seen receivers go earlier than we think every single year. And so somebody like Jaden Higgins, who tested like a freak, has the size, has the contested catch ability, I do think he is somebody who will go earlier than people are thinking right now.
Yeah, and then I think I'm guilty of this too, but everyone needs to remember where the Chargers were picking last year, and then of course the class that was last year. It's not like, oh, we're just gonna wait for that receiver in round 2. It's not the same. People even mentioned like trading up today, like they did last year. 34 to 31 is a lot easier than 55 to whatever they would need to.
Yeah,
I think for Higgins.
Yeah, at 54, you're in good range for Trey Harris. I think you're in good range for Jack Besh. You're in good range for Elik Ayomanor. But I do think Jaden Higgins is going to go earlier just because he has the tape, he has the numbers, he has the testing. He's the only really one of that group that can say that.
Random nugget. Chad Alexander was at Stanford this past summer doing, I think it was like a clinic or something.
Ooh.
For not business. I forget what it was. It's on his LinkedIn. Why was I looking at his LinkedIn? I don't remember. But
because we're sickos on this show. That's why.
and he was at Stanford this past summer doing that. So does that mean a ton? Not really, but he was, I think it could be digital. It could have been through Zoom, but I believe it was a hosted summit thing and he got a certificate for it.
I mean, if he got a certificate, he probably did go in person. Listen, man, Elik Ayomanor screams Harbaugh wide receiver. Like the man is a sicko blocker, and he didn't have as productive of a season this past year. Stanford did shift offenses to kind of more of like an air raid type system, which is not really his strength. But he would definitely fit as like an ex contested catch guy, blocks, toughness. Obviously, Stanford has the connection. So I'm not opposed to taking Elik at 54, although it sounds like he also could potentially go earlier than that too.
Yeah. Amending my previous statement, it was 2023. Same idea, Stanford. The NFL League of Leaders, Stanford University Graduate School of Business. He's got a credential or license or whatever from that.
There you go. I still think it's very relevant for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Tara says, don't get my hopes up again, guys. What is being a fan if not, outrageously getting your hopes up just to have them shattered? It's part of the business,
Best part. I love it. I love every year, we say something positive and it's like, and I see something negative. It's like, and I don't know. It's fun to hang out with fans sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. Andres Mason, take a chance on Kyron Lacey. Google Kyron Lacey Airport and then get back to us. I think you'll be answer that question pretty quickly. Saeed Gaida, I think that's how I'm going to say that one. I don't know if there was a comment here, but do appreciate the super sticker. Feel free and jump in and add in a super chat question if you are still in the show. We got a couple new members, Isaiah and Kelsey Lewis, as well as Dylan Cole. Thanks for joining.
Welcome back for those two.
I think welcome back. Yeah, that makes sense. Reginald wants to know if Alex is okay. He's fine. I think he was just a little perplexed by the lack of moves and the moves they did make yesterday.
I see. Yeah, Alex is fine as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, potentially could sign his other original lookalike in Tevin Jenkins, and then we have two Alex lookalikes on the show or on the team.
That'd be like
Andres Bautista, thoughts on Elijah Moore, the wide receiver formerly of the Jets, who Chad Alexander did help draft and then also trade to the Cleveland Browns.
and then got rid of. Does he play outside much?
Yeah, he does actually. I think he's mostly been outside.
Okay. All right. Well, I didn't expect that.
He's definitely smaller. He's smaller. He's more of like your Hollywood Brown type of outside receiver as opposed to bigger
$11 million or whatever.
It's 5'10".
Okay. I really liked Elijah Moore. So
Yeah, his first year in New York, he was 70% out wide.
it's so weird to even think of him with the Jets. Honestly, he's more productive recently than I would have guessed. So you know what? I will revisit this.
Yeah, 538 yards this last year. I did not know that.
No, that's pretty
652
good.
the year before that.
Not bad. Hey, you know who didn't have that? TJ Chark. So once again, anything is a step up.
Hey, listen, man, that's way more productive than I thought. Like, there's not been a ton of buzz about him. So I loved Elijah Moore coming out of the draft. I think you did as well.
Oh, yeah.
He was somebody during the 2022 season when there was some trade buzz. I was like, go get this guy. This would be fantastic. So yeah, I'm not opposed to that. Good shout out from Andres Bautista about Elijah Moore. Way more productive than I would have thought. So
yeah. Wait, how many drops does he have? Hold on. That's all right.
4 drops last year.
Yeah, 6.2%, 7.8 previous year. So
50% contested catch rate this year. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, man.
9 interceptions when targeted. Jameis, man. Oh, man.
Oh my gosh. That's brutal.
That's
9 interceptions when targeted. And he was targeted 97 times. So almost every 10 throws, someone's throwing a pick.
That is so funny.
That's brutal.
That's too good. Too good. Next one, James. Have you seen Pink Panther's tweets? I feel the same.
Did not.
Have not.
Did not. That's a terrible joke. I'm sorry.
But thank you for the super chat.
Thank you for the super chat, James.
All right, Tyler, any other thoughts before we head out for tonight?
I hope something more happens for the next time we do a live stream. This was nice to vibe with you guys. Over 800 people to talk about a visit from Evan Engram.
Yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys being here. And I don't know. We'll see. Oh, look at that. The chat has spoken on my Pink Panther theme song joke. They are unhappy or whatever that emoji is. Hungover. I don't know.
Watch, we're going to hop off and then like in an hour, they're going to sign somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. They'll just like trade for Micah Parsons in 4 minutes.
Ooh. Yeah, so we'll see what happens. We will be live tomorrow just because we want to vibe with you guys all week, and it's been a good views turnout, so we will be here tomorrow night as well, and hopefully we have some other signings. The new league year, for those who don't know, starts officially at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. That is when all of these teams have to be cap compliant. So I think there are going to be a good amount of players cut in the morning. There are going to be a good amount of trades that get finalized. There's going to be a lot of transactions tomorrow. So don't get got from some trolls. Make sure you have the notifications on from all of the reporters. And it looks like we got another super chat right at the buzzer from Alessandro.
My favorite tradition.
He says Ortiz is going to cook in the draft. What do you think about Trey Harris? You love Trey Harris, so
I'll twerk on a live stream, dog. I'll find my prettiest booty shorts and I will twerk on the live stream if they take him. Not at 22. That'll be no thank you to that one. But hey, man, I'm all in on the numbers, and I like Trey Harris. Thank God. It felt like for a month there was like nothing on him. And then Daniel Jeremiah's like him, and then people kept saying him. So I don't know. I'm feeling the vibes. I like Trey Harris. Let's do it.
Yeah, I like Trey Harris at 54 as well. I'm a little lower on him than you, but I think very firmly somebody I would be comfortable taking with in the top 60.
Yes. We'll clap, indeed. Okay, first of all, I don't actually have booty shorts, but I do have a wife, and I can find him.
Oh my gosh.
My stage name is Bangkok. The stream's never ending, by the way.
Oh my gosh.
Steven's gonna die. I'll do this question. Zach, top 5 free agents left you guys like. Really appreciate the show. Sorry for the buzzer beater. Elijah Moore, apparently. I don't mind Ingram. I'm going to go with guards the rest of the way. I don't know, interior defensive lineman too.
Yeah.
Honestly, maybe rewind and watch the show respectfully. It might be easier. But Ingram's great. It would have been Andre James if they didn't sign Bradley Bozeman to a multi-year extension. I guess at this point I'm desperate for Amari Cooper, which is a rough spot for me to be in. Draymond Jones sounds sick. I didn't realize Malik Collins was like a low-key all-pro that no one talks about, so I'm going with Malik Collins. And sure, if we just everyone wants to cut like Parkinson and Fant, and we just do Seattle West but lower, let's do that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Kevin Zeitler would have to be in my top 5. He's probably the best chance at like good guard play in 2025. So other than that, I think we're kind of on the same page there. Yeah, that's probably it. I can't believe you brought up booty shorts. I'm dying. Okay, that is officially going to do it for us tonight. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Had a great turnout. We will see you back here tomorrow, same time, 6 p.m. Hopefully for some actual moves. So day 3 of free agency starts tomorrow. We will be here at 6 p.m. on the Guilty as Charged podcast. We'll see you then. As always, Bolt up.